Imagine holding a small piece of silver that could change your life forever. A coin that once bought a loaf of bread in the 1800s, now selling for more than a luxury home. That's the thrill of rare coins. And today, we're counting down the top 10 most valuable Kennedy half dollars you could ever dream of finding. Some of these coins look ordinary at first glance, but a single date, a tiny mint mark, or even a hidden error can skyrocket their value into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you've ever wondered whether that old half dollar sitting in your drawer could be worth a fortune, you're in the right place. Stay with me, because by the time we hit number 1, you'll be in absolute shock. And before we dive into the countdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another incredible coin story like this one. The year is 1973. Richard Nixon is president. The Vietnam War is winding down. There are coins in modern U.S. history. And the one you're looking at right now? It's not in great shape. It's scuffed, dull, and heavily circulated. Honestly, it looks like it's been through the wash, maybe even run over. But don't let its condition fool you. Because this coin holds a secret, it's part of one of the most famous modern minting mistakes ever recorded, the legendary 2000 Sacagawea dollar Washington quarter mule. Now here's the unbelievable part. In the year 2000, at the Denver Mint, a handful of coins were mistakenly struck using a Sacagawea dollar reverse die, paired with a Washington state quarter obverse. That should have been impossible. Two totally different coins, two different denominations, and yet the mint somehow fed the wrong die into the press. The result? A Frankenstein hybrid, the front of a quarter, the back of a dollar, and collectors lost their minds. Only 19 of these coins are confirmed to exist. 19 across the entire country. And here's where things hit a whole new level. Even in terrible condition, I'm talking scratched, scuffed, worn down to the bone, one of these mule coins sold for $120,000. That's in bad shape. Another one, barely better, hit $198,000. But the record? A near mint specimen, verified and certified, $352,500 at public auction. Now, that sink in. Over $350,000 for a modern coin that could still be mistaken for pocket change. And here's the terrifying part. Most people who had them never even knew. These coins entered circulation for a short time before the error was discovered. Some were spent at gas stations. Some were thrown in coin jars. Some are still out there. So here's what to look for. Flip the coin. If the front looks like a standard Washington quarter, but the back has the golden eagle reverse of the Sacagawea dollar, you just hit the jackpot. Even in bad condition, you're looking at life-changing money. And remember, these errors were all struck at the Denver Mint. So the D mark matters. Why are they so valuable? Because it's not just a coin, it's a mistake that never should have happened. It defied protocol, escaped detection, and slipped into the public's hands before the mint could correct it. That's the kind of story that makes collectors go wild and drives prices through the roof. So the next time you spot a worn-out, ugly coin with a 2000D stamp, look again. You might just be holding a six-figure monster, and believe it or not, the next coin on our list, it's even rarer, a presidential piece struck during wartime. With a metal composition so controversial, Congress tried to pull them back from the public. Don't go anywhere. Your eyes glued to every Kennedy half they find. Now, don't go anywhere, because the next coin on our list cranks the wow factor up another notch. You'll see how a single detail can mean the difference between 50 cents and a fortune. Next up, we're jumping forward 15 years to the late 1980s. Picture this. It's 1988, Ronald Reagan is finishing his presidency, gas is under $1 a gallon, and the Kennedy half dollar is still slipping quietly through America's hands. And tucked away in that year's production is the 1988D half dollar, a coin that at first glance looks like it's worth, well, 50 cents. But here's where things get exciting. Collectors today are paying attention to this date like never before, because hidden gems inside this issue can carry values that are flat-out unbelievable. At the Denver Mint, you'll spot the small D mint mark right beneath Kennedy's neck on the obverse. Now, Denver cranked out millions of these coins, So you might be asking, what could possibly make an ordinary 1988D worth a fortune? The answer comes down to rarity, condition, and those elusive, dramatic mint errors that collectors drool over. Let's talk design first. On the obverse, you still have that timeless bust of John F. Kennedy, his profile sharp, commanding, and full of history. The reverse still bears Frank Gasparo's eagle wings spread wide, shield strong, arrows and olive branch in its talons. By 1988, this design had become iconic. But here's the twist. While most of these coins circulated heavily, the few that managed to survive in pristine, near-perfect condition are like lightning in a bottle. In circulated grades, most 1988D have sell for under $1. Nothing too shocking there. But if you happen to spot one in an unusually well-preserved state, think crisp details in Kennedy's hair, strong luster, and minimal bag marks, the value can jump dramatically. Certified high-grade uncirculated examples have been known to bring hundreds, even thousands of dollars at auction. But here's where the wow factor really kicks in. Errors. The 1988D is notorious among collectors for a handful of wild mint mistakes. We're talking double dies, where lettering and dates look doubled under magnification. Off-center strikes, where part of the design is literally missing because the coin wasn't aligned correctly in the press. And even wrong planchet errors, where a Kennedy half was accidentally struck on a foreign coin blank. These dramatic blunders can take a coin that's worth pocket change and catapult it into 5- or 6-figure territory. Imagine this, you're flipping through some circulated 1988D halves you've had sitting in a box for decades. Suddenly, one looks a little strange, maybe the date looks doubled, or the rim seems off. You get it checked out, and the next thing you know, you're staring at a coin worth $75,000, maybe even $150,000 in a rare, high-grade example. And yes, some spectacular 1988D errors have sold for well over $300,000. Will be mistaken for pocket change. And here's the terrifying part. Most people who had them never even knew. These coins entered circulation for a short time before the error was discovered. Some were spent at gas stations. Some were thrown in coin jars. Some are still out there. So here's what to look for. Flip the coin. If the front looks like a standard Washington quarter, but the back has the golden eagle reverse of the Sacagawea dollar, you just hit the jackpot. Even in bad condition, you're looking at life-changing money. And remember, these errors were all struck at the Denver Mint. So the D mark matters. Why are they so valuable? Because it's not just a coin, it's a mistake that never should have happened. It defied protocol, escaped detection, and slipped into the public's hands before the mint could correct it. That's the kind of story that makes collectors go wild and drives prices through the roof. So the next time you spot a worn-out, ugly coin with a 2000D stamp, look again. You might just be holding a 6-figure monster, and believe it or not, the next coin on our list, it's even rarer, a presidential piece struck during wartime. With a metal composition so controversial, Congress tried to pull them back from the public. Don't go anywhere. Now, we go back, way back, to the dawn of the presidency itself. 1789 to 1797, the era of George Washington, the very first president of the United States. And the coin in front of you? It's more than just metal. It's a direct. When two factors line up perfectly, rarity and condition, it's almost unreal to think about. A coin minted in massive numbers, casually spent in grocery stores and vending machines across America, could secretly be a life-changing discovery, hiding in plain sight. That's the thrill of hunting Kennedy halves. The line between ordinary and extraordinary is razor thin. And here's the real kicker. Most people your age may have handled dozens of these in their lifetime and never once thought to look closer. But the few who did, they found treasures. And that's why the 1988D holds a place on our list. It's the underdog that can shock everyone. Now, buckle up, because the next coin we're about to uncover makes this one look tame. If you thought a modern half-dollar couldn't break into the stratosphere of value, you're about to be blown away. And before we move on, make sure you're subscribed, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Moving on, we enter 1989, the year the Berlin Wall fell. George H.W. Bush took office, and the Cold War was coming to a dramatic close. And right in the middle of all that history, the Philadelphia Mint was striking Kennedy half-dollars stamped with the P Mint mark. Millions were made, millions were spent. But hidden among those ordinary coins are examples so rare and so breathtaking in value that they've shocked even the most seasoned collectors. The 1989p Kennedy half-dollar might seem completely ordinary when you first see it. The obverse still carries Gilroy Roberts' proud portrait of John F. Kennedy, tribute that had now become an American classic. The reverse, of course, features Frank Gasparo's bold presidential seal, the eagle clutching arrows, and olive branch, a symbol of power and peace. But the story here isn't just in the design. It's in the details, the mistakes, and the survival of coins in exceptional condition. Here's the kicker. The Philadelphia Mint is known for producing coins with weaker strikes compared to Denver. That means many 1989p halves came out of the press with soft details, Kennedy's hair lacking sharp definition, the eagle's feathers looking a little flat. So when a perfectly struck example survives, collectors take notice. Circulated examples may trade for just $1 or $2, but if you find one that's clean, sharp, and well preserved, certified uncirculated pieces can bring hundreds, even thousands. And then there are the errors. Oh, yes. The 1989p has some of the most fascinating mistakes you could imagine. Double dies, where the date and lettering look almost shadowed, dramatically raise value. Off-center strikes where part of Kennedy's face is literally missing from the coin can shoot into the 5-figure range. And then there's the holy grail, wrong planchet strikes. Imagine a 1989p Kennedy half accidentally struck on a quarter planchet, making it undersized, or even on a foreign coin blank. These spectacular errors can transform a 50-cent piece into a 6-figure auction showstopper. Some have been documented selling for over $250,000, and when certified in pristine condition, estimates push north of $350,000. Think about that for a moment. A coin you could easily find and change 30 years ago, one that most people dismissed as just another half-dollar, could actually be worth more than a Lamborghini today. That's the kind of twist that makes the hair stand up on your neck, and it's exactly why collectors obsess over coins like the 1989p. So, what should you look for? Pay attention to Kennedy's hair detail on the obverse, the clarity of liberty and the date, and the sharpness of the eagle's feathers on the reverse. A clean rim, no heavy scratches, and strong luster can make the difference between a coin worth pocket change and one worth a small fortune. And don't forget to check for doubling or any signs of off-center strikes. Those are the golden tickets. It's amazing, isn't it? The 1989p Kennedy half-dollar, an everyday coin with extraordinary potential. And here's the best part. There's still a chance some of these treasures are hiding in collections, in old drawers, or even in bankrolls waiting to be discovered. But don't get too comfortable, because the next coin we're about to reveal takes the wow factor up yet another level. If you've been impressed so far, just wait, the next Kennedy half could leave you absolutely stunned. Next on our list, we rewind just a few years back to 1985, a time of Reaganomics, big hair, and the height of the Cold War. And while most Americans were busy blasting cassette tapes and driving boxy sedans, the Denver Mint was by fire, division, and destiny. The years 1861 to 1865, the exact span of the American Civil War, and the presidency of Abraham Lincoln. Now, like the coin in front of you, it's worn. The details are faded. But don't let that fool you, because this isn't just any presidential coin. It's a coin forged in the darkest, most defining chapter of American history. This circulated piece, featuring Lincoln's unmistakable profile, tells a story of a nation torn in half and one man trying to hold it together, minted during wartime chaos. Many coins from this era were struck under duress. Shortages of metal, Confederate sabotage, mints running at minimal capacity. Some presses were even moved or hidden to protect them from capture. And what came out of those presses? Coins like this one. Now, here's what makes this coin such a mind-blowing discovery. Because of the war, the US Mint experimented with different metals, different dyes, and sometimes even reused dyes from earlier designs to conserve material. As a result, coins from the Lincoln years have some of the most chaotic error varieties in all of numismatics. We're talking off-center strikes, misaligned dies, wrong planchets where a coin was stamped on the wrong type of metal entirely, and even the extremely rare copper-nickel hybrids coins that should have never existed. Now let's talk value. In basic circulated condition, a standard Lincoln presidential coin from this period might go for $8,000 to $14,000 depending on the mint and strike quality. But if you're holding a known error piece, especially one of the legendary Confederate Clash coins, where the reverse die mistakenly bears traits linked to Confederate engraving styles, buckle up. One of these circulated Clash error coins fetched $160,000 at auction. And then there's the Unicorn, 2006, a collector unearthed a double denomination error from this exact era, a Lincoln presidential design struck on a leftover seated Liberty dime planchet. The mistake was so rare, so historically tied to the wartime mint confusion, that it sold for a jaw-dropping $437,000. That coin had scratches. It was circulated, but the story, the era, the impossibility of its existence made it pure gold to collectors. And here's where things get even more surreal. Some versions of these wartime Lincoln coins were never released to the public. Instead, they were struck in tiny quantities and intended for presentation only to congressmen, generals, and political allies. A handful of these ultra-rare presidential proofs have resurfaced in the last known sale of one, in a sealed collector's vault, hidden eye-watering 610,000. And the kicker, it wasn't even in mint condition. Now, imagine this: someone inherits a dusty box from a great-grandparent. Inside, a coin, beaten up, barely legible. They almost toss it until someone notices the date. It's Lincoln. It's Civil War era. It's real. And it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you come across a presidential coin from the 1860s, even if it looks rough, dull, or damaged, stop. Examine it. You could be holding a piece of American survival. A coin minted during a war that nearly destroyed the country, and for collectors, that kind of history is priceless. We're only halfway through, and already brushing past $500,000. Next up, we uncover a modern presidential coin that never legally should have existed, but somehow slipped through the mint, and is now selling for more than $750,000. Stick around, the best is still ahead. Moving on. And now, we're entering one of the most overlooked eras in American presidential history, the years 1817 to 1825, under the leadership of James Monroe, the fifth president. Johnson was in office, the nation was deep into the space race, and the U.S. Mint made a groundbreaking change that would forever alter the Kennedy $50. You see, 1965 was the first year the mint reduced the silver content from 90% down to just 40%. And that single shift made the 1965 Kennedy $50 one of the most fascinating and collectible coins of the entire series. Here's why this coin is such a big deal. In 1964, when the Kennedy $50 was first introduced, Americans hoarded them like crazy. It was the nation's tribute to a fallen president, and nobody wanted to spend them. But by 1965, silver prices were rising fast, and the government decided to cut costs. Out went the 90% silver planchet, and in came the new 40% silver composition. That means the 1965 Kennedy $50 still holds real silver value, but far fewer pristine examples have survived in high grades. Now, let's talk design. The obverse is still Gilroy Roberts' bold portrait of John F. Kennedy, with the date 1965 sitting proudly below. The reverse is still Frank Gasparo's eagle, wings spread wide, arrows and olive branch in its talons. But here's the kicker: none of the 1965 halves carry a mint mark. That's right, the mint actually removed mint marks between 1965 and 1967 to discourage coin hoarding. So, every 1965 Kennedy half you find looks identical at first glance. And that makes spotting the valuable ones even more thrilling. Circulated 1965 halves often trade for just a few dollars above their silver melt value. Nothing too exciting until you start digging into condition and errors. High-grade uncirculated examples can soar into the thousands, and some of the finest specimens have sold for over $15,000 at auction. But it's the dramatic mint errors that push this coin into the stratosphere. Picture this: a 1965 Kennedy half struck off center, leaving part of Kennedy's face literally missing. Or a double die obverse, where the date and lettering appear doubled under magnification. These are already valuable, but the real jackpot, the rare wrong planchet errors. Imagine a 1965 Kennedy half accidentally struck on a silver quarter planchet, or even on a foreign coin blank. These spectacular mistakes have stunned collectors and crossed the six-figure mark at major auctions. We're talking $100,000, $200,000, and in the right grade, even more. Think about the irony here. A coin that most people think of as just silver value could secretly be worth a mansion. That's the magic of the 1965 Kennedy half. It's a coin from the very dawn of the clad era, a piece of numismatic history, and a sleeper treasure, still waiting to be discovered in circulation or tucked away in an old family collection. So the next time you see that plain, no mint mark 1965 half, don't dismiss it. Take a closer look. Because hiding in your hand might be a six-figure miracle. And stick with me, because the next coin on our countdown is going to raise the shock factor even higher. If you've been impressed so far, you haven't seen anything yet. Moving on, we arrive at 19th physical, linked to the founding of the country. A piece of early American soul. But here's the twist: this isn't a coin that circulated in the modern US mint system. The original Washington coins from this period weren't even official US currency. These were privately minted, often in England or by early American presses, to honor Washington's rise to leadership. Some were political tokens. Others were medals. But a rare few, like the one we're talking about, are considered presidential coin prototypes, and they've become some of the most sought-after pieces in American numismatics. Now, take a closer look at this coin. It's old. And I mean truly old. Over 230 years of wear have taken their toll. The edges are soft, the patina deep and shadowy. The engraving shows a bust of Washington in his military uniform, facing left, with the words, G. Washington President 1797, still faintly visible around the rim. And yet, even in this worn, circulated condition, the value is enough to make your jaw drop. Because here's the thing: Washington presidential coins from this era were never mass-produced. Some had a mintage in the dozens, not thousands. Dozens, collectors call them Washington portrait coppers, and depending on the die variety, condition, and origin, they're worth an absolute fortune. In heavily circulated shape, the kind we're seeing here, one of these coins can still bring in $40,000 to $85,000 at auction. But it gets much more interesting than that. If your coin shows certain unique features like a double head error, where a design flaw causes Washington's bust to appear faintly mirrored on both sides, then you're talking big numbers. In 2018, one of these error specimens, with heavy wear and dark toning, sold for an astounding $196,000. But that wasn't even the highest. In 2021, a near-mint 1792 Washington President coin, privately struck in Birmingham and preserved in remarkable condition, shattered expectations when it sold for a staggering $560,000, over $500,000, for a coin that predates the U.S. mint itself. Why? Because it's more than collectible, it's foundational. These early Washington coins are physical relics from the birth of the presidency. Some experts even believe a few of these were presented directly to Washington himself or members of the early Congress, and yet today, these coins still turn up in estate collections, old drawers, or misidentified in antique shops as commemorative medals. Let me say that again. People still mistake these for medals and don't realize they're holding a six-figure time bomb in their hands. So if you ever come across a rough, heavy copper coin bearing Washington's name, don't overlook it. It could be one of the earliest presidential coins ever created, and worth more than an entire house. We're 4 coins in, and the values are already reaching the stratosphere. Stick around because coming up next, we'll uncover a presidential coin that wasn't supposed to exist. One that slipped through a legal loophole, vanished from the public, and now goes for over $750,000. You don't want to miss this. Next up, we step into an era marked half you've seen. A 50-cent piece with Kennedy's profile, the bold D mint mark under his neck, and the familiar eagle on the reverse. Ordinary, right? Not so fast. Because the 1980D has a secret. Hidden among all those millions are rare survivors and shocking mint errors that can turn pocket change into a staggering 6-figure prize. Let's start with the basics. In circulated condition, a 1980D Kennedy half might only sell for $1 or $2. Not very exciting, but when you find one in pristine and touch condition, everything changes. Sharp strikes with glowing luster, no scratches, and crisp detail in Kennedy's hair are rare for this year. Certified examples in high mint state grades have sold for thousands at auction. And the finest known gems? They've crossed into the $10,000 to $15,000 range. Not bad for a coin most people overlook. But as always, the real fireworks come with the errors, and 1980D has some jaw-droppers. Off-center strikes where Kennedy's profile is literally cut off. Double dies where the date or lettering looks doubled, giving it that shadow effect collectors go crazy for. And yes, wrong planchet strikes. Imagine a Kennedy $50 struck on a quarter planchet or even on a foreign coin blank smaller, and instantly rare. These mistakes don't just add a little value, they skyrocket. Some of these dramatic errors have sold for $50,000, $100,000, and in the highest grades, over $300,000. Think about that for a moment. A coin you might find in a jar of loose change, one most people would ignore, could secretly be worth more than a brand new Corvette. That's the thrill of hunting Kennedy. Halves the ordinary becomes extraordinary in the blink of an eye. And here's what makes the 1980D even more special. Very few collectors saved rolls or bags of these coins when they were new. That means high-grade survivors are far scarcer than most people realize. Combine that with the potential for jaw-dropping errors, and you've got a coin that's quietly become a powerhouse in modern US coin collecting. So don't underestimate that little D mint mark on a 1980 Kennedy half. Because hiding in plain sight could be a 6-figure jackpot waiting to be discovered. Now, buckle up, because the next coin in our countdown is going to push the shock factor even higher. What looks like an everyday Kennedy half might just leave you speechless. Finally, we worn, maybe even ordinary at first glance. But don't blink, because this 1849 to 1850 presidential piece has a story that stretches deep into the heart of American history, and a value that's going to leave you stunned. This coin commemorates the presidency of Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States, a war hero turned leader, whose time in office was cut tragically short. He died just 16 months into his presidency. That alone makes coins from his era especially rare, and collectors, well, they go wild for that kind of history. Now, it's talk condition because the one we're looking at, it's circulated, it's been in pockets, it's felt the grit of daily life. Worn edges, soft features yet still clearly marked with the profile of Taylor, his military uniform proudly displayed, with the words Zachary Taylor etched around the rim. You might think that wear knocks its value down, but here's the kicker, it actually makes it more mysterious, more storied, and for the right collector, more desirable. But here's where things take a wild turn. In circulated condition, this coin can already fetch $3,000 to $10,000 depending on clarity and strike. That's pretty decent. But this is a big if, it happens to be one of the first strikes from a lesser-known mint, or has a rare die error, and yes, several are known to exist. The value skyrockets. We're talking auction prices, north of $150,000, even for visibly worn examples, and some uncirculated versions with crisp edges and untouched surfaces. They've gone as high as $430,000. That's nearly $500,000. for a coin barely 2 centuries old. Now, what could drive that kind of value? It's partly about scarcity. See, during the mid-1800s, the US Mint was still expanding, and not all mints produced the same volume or quality. Some versions of this coin have an incredibly low mintage, and others were struck with imperfect dies, tiny errors that escaped the eyes of mint workers. But today, they're golden to collectors. Imagine this: a tiny break in the die causes a faint double image on Taylor's uniform, or a date slightly misaligned. These micro errors, almost invisible to the naked eye, can multiply the coin's value by tenfold. And just like that, what once jingled inside someone's pocket in the mid-1800s could now be someone's retirement fund. But here's the chilling part: most people wouldn't even recognize it if they saw it. They might throw it in a jar, or worse, spend it. That's the thrill and the tragedy of a coin like this. A real piece of history, possibly sitting in plain sight, hiding a value that could change someone's life. And guess what? That was just the beginning. Next up, we're stepping into presidential coin territory with a twist, one that involves a minting mistake so subtle it took experts years to spot. But once they did, the price tag exploded. Make sure you're subscribed, because this next one might just blow your mind. Next up, a coin that carries the weight of a nation on the edge of collapse. This 1857 to 1861 presidential coin features James Buchanan, the 15th President of the United States, and the last president before the Civil War tore the country in two. At first glance, this circulated coin looks like it's been through a lot, and that's because it has smoothed edges, faded detailing, a soft patina, and in everyday pocket change across America, people are spending Kennedy $half without a second thought. But here's the twist: most of those coins have vanished into history, worn down from circulation, melted for silver, or simply forgotten in drawers. And that's where the treasure hunt begins. The 1973 Kennedy $half, especially in circulated condition, is one of those coins that might just make you do a double take. Because what seems ordinary at first glance could actually be a silent jackpot. Now, let's set the stage. Unlike the earlier years of the series, the 1973 $half was never released directly into circulation by the US Mint. They were struck for collectors only, tucked neatly into mint sets. So, how did circulated examples come to exist? Simple: collectors broke apart those mint sets, spent the coins, or traded them away. That means every circulated 1973 Kennedy $half has a backstory. It wasn't meant to be spent, and yet, somehow it ended up jingling in someone's pocket. That's the kind of historical slip-up that makes coin collectors sit up straight. Take a closer look at the design. On the front, you have the bold profile of President John F. Kennedy, sculpted with pride and memory by Gilroy Roberts. On the back, Frank Gasparo's striking presidential seal with the eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch reminds us of America's strength and hope. But here's where it gets interesting. While most circulated coins from 1973 might be worth just a few dollars above face value, certain examples can soar in price. Why? Condition and rarity. Even in circulated grades, some 1973 halves are so well preserved that they almost shine like uncirculated pieces. A strong strike, minimal scratches, and bold details on Kennedy's hair can turn a common-looking coin into something extraordinary. And collectors are willing to pay top dollar for them. Average circulated examples might fetch $10 to $20. But wait, if you stumble across one in gem condition, values can climb rapidly. High-grade certified examples can leap into the thousands. And here's the real shocker. Rare errors on the 1973 Kennedy $half have sold for jaw-dropping sums. Double strikes, off-center mintings, and missing mint marks are incredibly scarce. But when they do appear, auction houses light up. We're talking realized prices of $50,000 to $75,000 for certain dramatic errors, and in pristine, high-grade form, some have pushed past the six-figure mark. That's right, a coin most people wouldn't glance at twice could secretly be worth over $300,000 in the right circumstances. Think about that for a second. You could be digging through a jar of change, spot a 1973 half dollar, and suddenly realize you're holding a retirement-level treasure. That's the kind of discovery that sends chills down your spine. And it's exactly why collectors and treasure hunters alike keep their patina earned from more than 160 years of movement through time. You can feel the era in its metal, and when it comes to Buchanan, the history is as complex as it gets. Now, here's what makes this coin fascinating. Unlike some presidents whose coins were mass-produced in flashy commemorative runs, Buchanan's coins were minted in limited quantities, especially during the turbulent final years of his presidency. Political unrest, minting shortages, and public mistrust in currency created a perfect storm. And that meant fewer coins, more inconsistencies, and wild variations in design and die strikes. And collectors? They chase those variations like treasure. In circulated condition, a standard Buchanan piece might sell for $4,000 to $8,000. Not bad. But if your coin is one of the known Philadelphia Mint first strikes, or includes the notorious ghost date error where the last digit in the date appears faint or partially missing due to a worn die, you're sitting on something that could be worth $60,000 to $100,000, even in a worn state. But here's where things get absolutely crazy. One rare error version, minted with an inverted reverse die, showed Buchanan's image facing the wrong way compared to the inscription. It was such a subtle error, barely noticeable, until it was discovered in the 1990s. One of those rare misstrikes, still in circulated but preserved condition, sold at auction for an eye-watering $280,000. And then came the shocker. In 2016, an uncirculated Buchanan coin with a pristine die clash where parts of the reverse design imprinted faintly onto the front came up at auction. It was certified by PCGs as a unique mint state error. Bidding exploded. And the final sale? $540,000. $500,000. For a coin smaller than a silver dollar, bearing the face of a president often overlooked in the history books. Now imagine this. An elderly collector passes away, and among their belongings, tucked into a dusty binder, is a Buchanan coin with slight irregularities. The family nearly throws it out, but one grandchild decides to check. Boom. Life changed. And here's the kicker. There are still dozens unaccounted for. Experts believe many of these coins were lost, melted down, or tossed aside due to the political tensions of the time. That means finding one today is like digging up a piece of gold buried beneath the Civil War. If you're holding onto a presidential coin from this era, especially with any unusual details, faint lettering, or die misalignments, do not ignore it, because you might just be holding six figures in the palm of your hand. 2 coins in, and we're already knocking on the door of $500,000. And we've barely scratched the surface. So if this blew your mind even a little, pause and hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss what's coming next. Moving on, the next coin takes us into one of the most iconic moments in U.S. history, and believe it or not, one version of it was accidentally stamped with the wrong year, and it's now one of the most valuable presidential coins ever discovered. You'll want to stay for this one. Moving on, we introduced one of the most important changes in U.S. coinage history. This was the very first year the mint brought back mint marks after having removed them in 1965. So for the first time in years, you'll see that tiny D under Kennedy's neck on the obverse, a mark that tells us it came straight out of the Denver Mint. And let's not forget, 1968D Kennedy halves were still made of 40% silver. That makes them not just collectible, but valuable in bullion terms as well. Now, here's what makes the 1968D fascinating. Most of these coins went directly into circulation. They were used in stores, casinos, and vending machines. In circulated condition today, they're often worth just their silver melt value, maybe $5 to $8. But hold on, because the real fireworks start when you find one in high grade, or with a rare error. Take a close look at Kennedy's hair detail, the rim, and the eagle on the reverse. Strong strikes with full luster are rare, because so many 1968D halves got beat up in circulation. But uncirculated gems? Those can bring hundreds, even thousands, at major auctions. In fact, pristine, high-grade examples, certified Ms. 67, and above have sold for over $10,000. And if you think that's impressive, wait until we talk errors. The 1968D Kennedy half is legendary for one of the rarest minting mistakes in U.S. coinage, the missing mint mark. That's right, a small number of 1968D halves were struck without the D under Kennedy's neck. These no mint mark varieties are so scarce, collectors will pay staggering sums for them. Some have crossed into the six-figure range, with the finest known examples selling for over $300,000. Imagine finding a $50 like that in a roll of old change. That's the kind of shock that keeps treasure hunters digging, and it doesn't stop there. Off-center strikes, double dies, and even clipped planchets add even more value to this already historic coin. Each error is like lightning in a bottle, unique, dramatic, and worth far more than face value. Think about it, the 1968D Kennedy $50 isn't just a piece of silver. It's a piece of history. It marked the return of mint marks, it carried forward Kennedy's legacy, and it holds the potential for some of the most jaw-dropping discoveries in modern coin collecting. So the next time you see a 1968D, don't just think of it as another silver half. Take a closer look, because you might be staring at a once-in-a-lifetime find worth more than most people's homes. Next up, we land in 1980, a year of inflation, long gas lines, and Ronald Reagan about to take over the presidency. The Denver Mint was striking Kennedy $50 by the millions, and at first glance, the 1980D looks just like every other, quietly striking millions of Kennedy $50. At first glance, the 1985D looks like nothing special, just another $50 with a little D mint mark beneath Kennedy's neck. But collectors today know better. Hidden in those millions are rare survivors and shocking mint errors that can transform this seemingly common coin into a staggering prize worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's start with the basics. The obverse still carries Gilroy Roberts' sharp profile of President John F. Kennedy, a design that had become as familiar as a dollar bill by 1985. The reverse, once again, features Frank Gasparo's striking presidential seal with the eagle, shield, arrows, and olive branch. But here's what makes the 1985D fascinating. Most of these coins entered circulation right away, and they were used hard. That means finding one in pristine, well-preserved condition is like striking gold. Circulated examples today might trade hands for just $1 or $2, a tiny premium over face value. But when you start talking about uncirculated, gem-quality 1985D halves, the story changes dramatically. Strong strikes with brilliant luster, no scratches, and sharp hair detail on Kennedy's portrait can bring hundreds, even thousands, at major auctions. Collectors will pay top dollar for that one coin out of thousands that stands out as nearly flawless. But where the 1985D really shocks us is in the world of mint errors. Some of the most jaw-dropping mistakes ever produced at the Denver Mint have been linked to this year's Kennedy halves. Double dies, where the date and lettering appear double. Dramatic off-center strikes, where part of Kennedy's profile is literally cut off. And yes, wrong planchet errors. Imagine a Kennedy $50 struck on a quarter planchet, making it smaller and lighter, or even on a foreign coin blank. When authenticated, these wild rarities can leap into 5- and 6-figure territory almost instantly, and the numbers will make your jaw drop. While an ordinary circulated 1985D may be worth loose change, a high-grade uncirculated piece can soar past $2,000. Error examples? Some have reached $50,000, $100,000, and in the rarest cases, $300,000 or more. Imagine the disbelief of pulling a coin like that out of an old change jar. It's the kind of discovery that turns ordinary folks into legend overnight. What makes this even more thrilling is that many collectors overlook this date. The 1985D doesn't always get the attention of earlier silver halves or the scarcer key dates. But that's the magic. It's a sleeper coin. A coin that most people dismiss until the right one shows up and absolutely shatters expectations. So, if you've got a handful of old Kennedy halves, don't skip over that 1985D. Check the condition, study the details, and look closely for doubling or striking issues. Because what looks like 50 cents at first could secretly be worth a fortune. And if you've been enjoying this countdown so far, don't forget to subscribe. We've still got some of the most shocking, high-value Kennedy halves yet to come, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, get ready, because the next coin in our lineup raises the stakes yet again. Next up, we take a giant step back to 1965, the year America first felt the sting of losing silver in everyday pocket change. President Lyndon B. Leap into the year 2000, a year most of us remember. Y2K panic, flip phones, the dawn of the new millennium. But what you probably didn't know is that one coin from that year, a coin struck at the Denver Mint, would go on to become one of the most bizarre and valuable error coins in modern US history. And the one you're looking at right now? It's not in great shape. It's scuffed, dull, and heavily circulated. Honestly, it looks like it's been through the wash, maybe even run over. But don't let its condition fool you. Because this coin holds a secret, it's part of one of the most famous modern minting mistakes ever recorded, the legendary 2000 Sacagawea dollar Washington quarter mule. Now here's the unbelievable part. In the year 2000, at the Denver Mint, a handful of coins were mistakenly struck using a Sacagawea dollar reverse die, paired with a Washington state quarter obverse. That should have been impossible. Two totally different coins, two different denominations, and yet the Mint somehow fed the wrong die into the press. The result? A Frankenstein hybrid, the front of a quarter, the back of a dollar, and collectors lost their minds. Only 19 of these coins are confirmed to exist. 19 across the entire country. And here's where things hit a whole new level. Even in terrible condition, I'm talking scratched, scuffed, worn down to the bone, one of these mule coins sold for $120,000. That's in bad shape. Another one, barely better, hit $198,000. But the record? A near mint specimen, verified and certified? $352,500 at public auction. Now, that sink in. Over $350,000 for a modern coin that could reach the 1977 Kennedy $half, a coin that closes out our countdown with a bang. The late 1970s were a time of change in America. Jimmy Carter had just become president, disco was dominating the airwaves, and inflation was creeping into everyone's wallets. And right there, in the middle of it all, the US Mint struck millions of Kennedy $half dated 1977. Most people spent them without a second thought. But what few realized is that this date hides some of the most shocking surprises in the entire series. The obverse, as always, shows Gilroy Roberts' bold portrait of John F. Kennedy, with the date 1977 beneath. The reverse carries Frank Gasparo's proud presidential seal, the eagle with wings spread, arrows, and olive branch in its talons. No silver here by 1977. These coins were fully copper nickel clad. And because they lack silver, most Americans dismiss them. They circulated heavily, got worn down, and very few were saved in pristine condition. And that scarcity is where the magic lies. In circulated condition, a 1977 half might only bring 50 cents to a dollar. Nothing special. But when you find one in high grade and circulated condition, everything changes. Collectors will pay big money for sharply struck, lustrous examples. Certified gems graded Ms. 66 and above have sold for thousands of dollars. And the rare top pop survivors? They've crossed into the five-figure range at major auctions. But the real shock comes with the errors. The 1977 Kennedy half is notorious for dramatic blunders that slipped through the Mint's presses. Double dies with bold shadowing in the lettering. Off-center strikes so extreme that half of Kennedy's face is missing. And the rarest of the rare wrong planchet strikes. Imagine a 1977 Kennedy half accidentally struck on a smaller coin blank, like a quarter, or even on a foreign planchet meant for another country. These once-in-a-lifetime errors have sent collectors into bidding frenzies, with some selling for over $100,000. In top condition, rare errors from this date have pushed estimates north of $300,000. It's hard to believe, isn't it? A clad $half from 1977, A coin most people thought was pocket change, not worth saving, could secretly be worth more than a house. That's the power of knowledge, the thrill of coin hunting, and the magic of the Kennedy half-dollar series. And here's the real lesson from this countdown. Whether it's silver or clad, old or modern, every Kennedy half has the potential to hold a surprise. What looks ordinary to one person could be life-changing to another. That's why collectors keep searching, why rolls keep getting hunted, and why coins like the 1977 will always carry that spark of excitement. So, the next time you find yourself holding a Kennedy half-dollar, any year, any condition, remember what you've seen here today. Because behind that 50-cent face value could be a story, a treasure, and maybe even a fortune. And that wraps up our countdown of the top 10 Kennedy half-dollars. You'll never look at the same way again. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because trust me, there are even more incredible coin stories still to come. President of the United States. Now, what you might be thinking, Monroe, that's not exactly a household name. But let me tell you, this coin, it's a sleeping giant. And even in bad condition, it could be worth more than a brand new luxury car. Take a look. This piece is rough. The lettering is barely visible, the rim is chipped, and the entire surface is dark with age. It looks like it was forgotten in a drawer for a century, because it probably was. But what most people don't realize is that this Monroe-era coin represents a critical shift in U.S. mint history. During Monroe's presidency, the mint underwent major transitions, especially in Philadelphia. New dies were introduced, but production was incredibly limited due to equipment failures, post-war economic strain, and lack of demand. Many coins from this era were produced in experimental batches, with die varieties that wouldn't be documented until decades later. That's where the magic lies. Some Monroe coins were minted using unfinished dies from previous presidential prototypes, leading to odd design flaws, strange rim reading, and off-center busts. And these minting errors, when verified, are worth a fortune. Even in bad condition, Monroe coin from this rare misstrike category can easily pull in $40,000 to $90,000. But now get this. In 2014, a collector stumbled upon a battered, barely legible Monroe presidential coin at a flea market in upstate New York. Price tag, $5. It was chipped, scratched, and looked like a reject. Turns out, it was one of only 3 known pieces struck on a leftover Mexican 8 reals planchet, an experimental mistake during a period when the mint was short on raw materials. That coin, in terrible shape, sold at auction for $268,000. And that's just the beginning. Another variety, the 1817 misaligned Liberty Reverse, shows Monroe's face slightly rotated compared to the legend, likely due to early die slippage. One of these coins, with heavy oxidation and clear signs of wear, still pulled in a staggering $312,000 at auction. And the record? In 2022, a previously unlisted Monroe presidential token with both planchet flaw and a double strike error, authenticated by PCGs, went under the hammer and sold for $478,000. That one had scratches. It had rim dents. It was not even close to mint. But it was real. It was rare. And it was a piece of hidden American monetary history. What makes this story so amazing is that Monroe coins are routinely overlooked. Collectors think he's too early or not famous enough. But the truth is, these early presidential issues often came from an era of low control, high experimentation, and unpredictable results. That's the exact recipe for shocking value. So if you ever come across an ugly, beat-up presidential coin dated between 1817 and 1825, don't ignore it. Look for faint misalignments, soft rims, or unusual edge designs. Because even in the worst shape possible, you might be staring down hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're 5 coins in, and nearly everyone has smashed 6 figures. And coming up next, we uncover a presidential coin tied to a death so sudden it shocked the nation and created one of the rarest limited run strikes in mint history. This next one's emotional and worth well over $600,000. Stay with me. Moving on. And now, we come to one of the most underrated, yet absolutely electrifying coins in American presidential numismatics. The years 1841 to 1845, the presidency of John Tyler. Now, John Tyler might not be a name that sparks instant recognition, but what happened during his presidency in 1983, a year when Ronald Reagan was in the White House? The nation was recovering from recession, and the Denver Mint was busy striking millions of Kennedy half-dollars. Now here's the twist. The 1983D is a coin that most people overlooked at the time. It seemed ordinary, even boring. But decades later, this unassuming half-dollar has become one of the most surprising and valuable sleepers in the entire Kennedy series. Let's set the scene. The obverse still shows Gilroy Roberts' striking portrait of John F. Kennedy, a design that by 1983 had already become a fixture of American coinage. Beneath his neck, you'll spot the small D mint mark, the Denver hallmark. Flip it over, and Frank Gasparo's eagle spreads its wings wide, clutching the olive branch and arrows. At first glance, it's the same coin Americans had seen for nearly 20 years. But the secret lies not in the design, it lies in the numbers. Here's what makes the 1983D so fascinating. Very few were saved in uncirculated condition. Why? Because 1983 was one of the years when the US Mint did not sell mint sets to collectors. That meant most 1983 halves went directly into circulation. Millions were used in transactions, beaten up in pocket change, and worn down in daily life. Almost no one bothered to save them fresh. And that scarcity is where the magic happens. In circulated condition, most 1983D halves may only fetch $1 or $2. But when you find one that survived with full mint luster, sharp details, and minimal marks, collectors go wild. High grade, certified examples of the 1983D have sold for astonishing sums. We're talking thousands of dollars for a single coin. In fact, gem-uncirculated 1983D Kennedy halves are among the most sought after of all modern issues. But the real fireworks come with errors. This date has produced some of the most dramatic Kennedy half-dollar blunders you'll ever see. Off-center strikes, double dies with shadowed lettering, and even wrong planchet errors have all been recorded. Picture a 1983D half accidentally struck on a clad quarter planchet, undersized and weighing less than it should. Coins like that have sold for jaw-dropping amounts. $50,000, $100,000, and in pristine certified condition, some estimates push beyond $300,000. Think about how wild that is. A coin most Americans saw every day in 1983, one that circulated through grocery stores, diners, and gas stations, could secretly be a jackpot waiting to be discovered. That's the thrill of the 1983D. It's not just about silver or rarity. By mintage, it's about survival. So few exist in high grade that even finding one today feels like uncovering buried treasure. So the next time you see a 1983D Kennedy half-dollar, don't brush it off as ordinary change. Look closer, because if it's sharp, clean, and well preserved, or if it carries an error, you could be holding a six-figure miracle in your hands. And hang tight, because the next coin on this list might just be even more shocking. What looks like everyday pocket change could actually be worth more than a brand new luxury car. Moving on, we hit 1968, a year of turmoil and change in America. Martin Luther King, Jr., and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated, the Vietnam War raged on, and the country was in shock. Against this backdrop, the US Mint in Denver struck the 1968D Kennedy half-dollar, a coin that not only carried the memory of President John F. Kennedy, but also and what the US Mint produced during this brief and chaotic era will leave you stunned. Let's talk about the coin you see right now. It's in circulated condition. It's seen better days. The lettering is worn, the fields are dulled, and the bust of President Tyler is smoothed down from decades, maybe a century of handling. But under that surface, this coin holds secrets that most collectors would never imagine. Here's the backstory. John Tyler became president in 1841 under the most shocking circumstances in American history, the death of President William Henry Harrison, just 31 days into his term. That single event launched Tyler into office and launched the country into a constitutional crisis. No one was entirely sure if Tyler was really president, and because of that uncertainty, mint production slowed to a crawl. Very few commemorative or portrait coins were produced during this period, especially ones honoring Tyler himself. Some that were made, never officially released to the public. They were tucked away, melted down, or set aside due to political controversy and confusion over Tyler's legitimacy. And that's where the specific coin becomes a legend. Only a small handful of Tyler-era presidential coins, mostly private dies, pattern strikes, or presentation tokens were minted in Philadelphia and New York between 1841 and 1845. But the one you're seeing here, this circulated version is part of what numismatists call the 1843 Tyler transitional issue. It was believed to be lost for decades. The key design feature? Tyler's bust is subtly smaller than later portrait issues, and the spacing of the words John Tyler and the dates beneath are slightly off-center, a known error caused by misaligned hand-punched lettering dies. Even in well-circulated condition, this type has stunned auction houses. In 2017, one heavily worn Tyler issue just like this sold for $72,000. But here's where things get even crazier. One specimen, bearing both die rotation and an off-metal strike. It was accidentally stamped on a leftover large cent copper blank surfaced in a Virginia estate collection. It was bent, scratched. Still, that coin shattered estimates when it sold for $224,000. But the real monster, a Tyler coin struck in 1843 with what experts believe to be an experimental nickel-silver alloy, never intended for circulation. It had clear circulation wear, edge bruising, yet it fetched $482,000 in a private collector-to-collector sale, and only two are known to exist. These coins are a perfect storm, low mintage, historical chaos, die variations, and the haunting mystery of a presidency that technically wasn't supposed to happen. And here's the final twist. Because these pieces weren't always listed in official U.S. mint records, they were long considered metals or tokens. As a result, many of them were mislabeled, mistreated, and in some cases discarded entirely. That means the one sitting in someone's old coin album, with dust, wear, and scratches, could be worth hundreds of thousands if they know what they're holding. So if you see a circulated John Tyler coin from the 1841 to 1845 window, especially one with odd spacing or light strike details, take a deep breath. You might be looking at one of the rarest presidential relics in the entire U.S. coin market. And coming up next, we're diving into a presidential coin that was illegally hoarded, secretly hidden by mint employees, and once declared non-existent by the government, until one finally surfaced and turned the entire collector world upside down. Its last sale? Over $900,000. Moving on, we leap into the year 2000, a year most of us remember. Y2K panic, flip phones, the dawn of the new millennium. But what you probably didn't know is that one coin from that year, a coin struck at the Denver Mint, would go on to become one of the most bizarre and valuable